Hello and welcome. In today's video we are doing part 2 of the favorite eyeshadow palettes from every brand. So if you like that kind of content, make sure you stay tuned. Hello and welcome my friends. New or returning, I appreciate you being here. In today's video we are doing part 2 where we are talking about all the high-end eyeshadow brands and my favorite palettes from those brands. Now again, I'm sure I didn't catch every brand, but I tried to catch the ones that I could think of, like, you know, either my favorite brands period, or you know, just that I have the most palettes from, you know what I mean, that I could really give my strong feelings on. So yeah, so again, I'm sure I could have forgotten a brand here and there. I apologize if I did, but if I did, just leave me a comment and let me know, what brand you were thinking of and the palette you love from that brand. So I'd love to hear from you. Otherwise, if you do enjoy this content, make sure you give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe down below, turn on all notifications. Otherwise, let's get right into the video because there's quite a few. There's more here than there are in my drugstore, or my affordable. So yeah. So stay tuned. All right, so just getting right into this, I'm just gonna go, I have a pile here of stuff and we're just gonna go down the line and I'm gonna tell you my thoughts. Athr Beauty. Now this was before they rebranded or changed the name a little bit and condensed it. I don't know why they did. I never really heard much about that. But this is the Amethyst Crystal Gemstone palette. And this is just beautiful. You know I love my purples, but I love this palette. It is gorgeous and so smooth. If you are somebody with more texture, a little bit more mature, you know what I mean, hooded eyes, that kind of thing, these wear so well on the eyes. They're so smooth. They don't emphasize any texture. Such a good brand, and their packaging I think is all recyclable. I believe they're cruelty-free and vegan if I remember correctly, but yeah, just a beautiful, wonderful brand and a beautiful palette. So my favorite from their brand so far. Oh, Charlotte Tilbury. Oh, that sounded really weird. Oh, Charlotte Tilbury. You know, what can I say? This is the Instant Eye palette, Smoky Eyes Are Forever. I chose this one because number one, these palettes I think are the better value. You're getting more for your money out of these palettes. They're $75. They might have gone up now, but you're getting the most value out of this. And I like this color story. I love these greens. I just love that there's a little bit of variance, a variation of colors in here. So it's not just her everyday pillow talk pinks, you know what I mean? So you've got some purples in there. You've got some of these more warm tone. You got your greens, like I said before, and then of course you do have a little bit of pinks because she couldn't do a palette without doing some pinks. But yeah, but I just like the color variation in here. I think it's a really, really pretty palette and one of my favorites from Charlotte Tilbury. Oh, Anastasia Beverly Hills. Now, if you had asked me this last year, this would have been a different answer, but this year, Anastasia Beverly Hills Nouveau palette is absolutely my favorite palette. I love this color story. That is me. These like muted greens and just, they're muted. They're warm tones, but they're muted. This is just me in a palette. I love this palette. I think it's beautiful. I remember when it first came out, I was just like, yes, I've got to have that palette, and I'm so glad I have it and it's in my collection. Love it. Love it. One of my favorites from Anastasia Beverly Hills. Wayne Goss. Now I do have a few of his palettes now. I think I have maybe 4 of them now. I think 3 or 4. I don't know. This one is Tourmaline. So far, still my favorite color story. I'm still waiting to try to get a hold of the Pearl. It's been out of stock forever. I don't know if it's ever going to come back in stock. But other than that one, I love the color story on this one. And I love too that it has a little bit more of different formulas. Like a lot of these are satin shades with a matte shade here and then like a topper, like more, you know, shimmery shade here in the corner. So I like the color story. I like the formula. One of my favorites from Wayne Goss. So again, still waiting to pick up the Pearl if it ever comes back in stock, but so far that's my favorite. Lawless. I have the Glam One. Out of the Lawless palettes, this one is definitely my favorite. I really, really like this color story, and these metallic shades are so, so pretty and smooth and sparkly. I just love it. It's just my color story. Yeah, I love this palette. Again, one of my favorites from Lawless. I didn't really get along with it the one palette. I don't know, it was a little bit, maybe a little too warm tone for me, and maybe that's what it is, but I definitely love that palette. Melt Cosmetics. Now, not a lot of people are going to agree with this, but Mary Jane, this palette is my favorite. And again, it's that grungy, but it's a little bit cooler tone grungy. And I know a lot of people said they had problems like with this first shade and this last shade, but I think they were beautiful. They're, you know, they're a little chunky, they're a little thick, you know, so you have to like those kind of shadows, but this color story is just gorgeous. This is the most wearable of Melt Cosmetics, of their brand, of their palettes, for me, for what I like. This is the most wearable one. Brunette is okay too, but again, I think this just has the color story that I enjoy the most. So that's my favorite from Melt Cosmetics. NARS, oh, you know this one's coming. Climax palette, still my favorite from that brand. Love this color story, love the metallics, the formula. It's gorgeous. I just love this, and the mattes just perform really, really well. But again, if I'm gonna do greens, these are the color of greens that I'm gonna do. I love those greens. That's my green. So, and yeah, I love this. It's so pretty. Such a pretty color story. Love this palette. Definitely one of my favorites. Artist Couture. I really wanted to love Supreme Mauves. It's such a pretty color story. The color story is more me, but the formula, the Supreme Nudes, is definitely the best of the ones that I've tried from his brand so far, or this brand. Yeah, so unfortunately, I really wanted to love the Supreme Mauves. I love the color story, but it's just dry and it just doesn't perform the same. I don't know what happened, but this is definitely the best palette I have from Artist Couture. So let's just hope the next one's better quality. Violet Voss. Olive You Forever. I still love this palette. I think I got it in a BoxyCharm, but so far it's still my favorite palette from them. And again, it's these greens. Like if I'm gonna do greens, these are the greens that I'm gonna do, and I just love that. Still a little bit more warm tone, but it does have a little bit more cooler tone shadows in there too. It's just got a beautiful balance, and these metallics are just beautiful. Satins are nice. The mattes perform really well. Just one of my favorites. I love that palette. Urban Decay, the Stoned Vibes palette. This one kind of surprised me because I'm like, you know, but man, I swatched these and wore them, you know, a couple of different times at one point here, and oh my gosh, these are such pretty shadows. I mean, the metallic formula in there is so, so pretty. And it's kind of cool too, because I mean, really, if you wanted to, you could just use this palette and get an entire look, because you have a couple of mattes at the ends there, and then all your metallics in the center. So it really is kind of an all-in-one palette, but then again, you can still use it and mix and match and, you know, blend it with another palette. So it's got a nice variation. So I really like this palette. Very bulky, very big and heavy, but good palette. I really like it. Sigma Beauty. Now this one was a little bit more difficult because I really like Sigma. I like majority of their eyeshadow palettes, so for me to choose one, it was kind of hard. But I went with Color Story, and the one that spoke to me the most is New Mod. This color story is just beautiful. This color story is just beautiful. I love this. I love this palette, love the color story. The quality is superb. It's just beautiful. It's a beautiful palette. And again, Sigma is just one of those ones. If you had asked me like a year or so ago, I'd have been like, I wouldn't even thought twice about Sigma. But now, since they've come out with a lot more of these palettes and their little 9-pan palettes, that kind of thing, I really love Sigma. I love every time they come out with a new launch, I'm like, ooh, let me check this out. So, and I know they just came out with a new one for their holiday. Like, I think it's either a 6 or 7-pan palette. I'm like, I so want to jump on that, but I'm going to hold off. I'm going to hold off a little bit because, yeah, they do sales a lot too. So watch out for sales. So anyways, but yeah, that's my favorite palette from them. Have Nabla. Now I only have a few Nabla palettes. They just don't really catch my attention a whole lot. But if I had to choose any of them, this Side by Side palette is definitely my favorite. And again, it's just that mix of like just those nice neutral tones that I love so much, some cooler tones, warmer tones. It's just a nice mix. It's a beautiful palette. The shimmer satin shades are really nice. Metallics, you know, it's just, they're nice. It's just a beautiful color story. So really, really nice palette. Lorac. Now, you know my #1 palette is the Noir, but for whatever reason, I don't know what happened, but ever since I did my declutter, I cannot find that palette. I don't know what I did with it. I don't know where I stashed it. I've looked, I swear, almost everywhere. So I've got to look through everything again, but that is absolutely my #1 palette. But since I couldn't show it, I figured I'd show at least a second favorite. These are little ones, but as far as like their little mini 6-pan palettes, I've got Mystic Oak, which I think is my absolute favorite, but Winter Rose is quickly behind it. So I think these are two of my favorite. They're little 6-pan palettes, but Noir, all the way, and I'll just insert a picture so you can see it, but that is like me. Like, the color story is amazing. But yeah, like I said, since the last video I recorded with it, I don't know what I did with it. I can't find it, so let's just hope that I find it, because I love that palette. So sad. Okay. Persona Cosmetics. Again, I don't feel like they have a lot as far as eyeshadows, but if I had to choose one, it's definitely the Identity. The first one is my favorite. Beautiful color story, beautiful satin shades, performs really, really well. The mattes are nice. It's just so cohesive. I love this color story. It's so, so pretty. Such good quality. And again, I do have the older one I think they've changed the packaging now, but I have the like cardboard. But yeah, love this palette. Still performs just as well as it did when I first bought it. So definitely my favorite. Viseart. This was a hard one for me to choose too, because I really like their formula. I like a lot of their palettes, but the one I did have to choose is the Cashmieri, just because of the color story. Again, this just speaks to me. That is a beautiful color story. You know, I love my muted like purples and just that like cooler tone. That is, again, just me. This is what I love. And this is a fabulous formula. Viseart has a wonderful formula as far as their mattes and metallic shimmer shades. Really, really good quality. So this is definitely my favorite from that brand. So next we have Tarte. I went back and forth. I'm like, I have a few here, and I was like, well, which one actually is my favorite? And I'm gonna have to say the Tartelette Jewel is probably my favorite, because it's definitely the one I've worn the most recently. So it's a little bit newer in my collection, but it's just a perfect little on-the-go palette. Beautiful metallic shades there. The mattes perform really well. You have a satin shade there, but it's just a great little all-in-one palette. You can make an entire look with just this one palette. Even the inner corner, the brow bone, you've got that, there, it's got your mattes to lighten, darken, you know what I mean? Like, it's just got everything. It's got everything you need in one little palette. So definitely love this palette, and that was a Lauren May Beauty Made Me Buy. And thank you, Lauren, because I do like it. We now have Too Faced. I would say probably from them, my favorite is the Born This Way, the Natural Nudes. I know they have the newer one that came out as well, but I still think this is my favorite as far as the tones. And I think actually both palettes seem very similar. Like, I don't feel like there's all that much difference between the two, but this is probably a little bit more cooler toned than the other palette. So again, this is just one that I would reach for before I reach for the newer one. So, but it's a gorgeous palette. The metallics are really, really nice. Mattes perform well. Great palette. So definitely my favorite from that brand. And again, I almost put Anastasia Sultry. Still love this palette. Still gorgeous. Still one of my favorites. But I'd have to say the Nouveau has probably knocked that one out of first place. Like, that's a close first. Close, next in line. But anyways. All right, Patrick Ta. I had to put this in here. The Major Dimension Eyeshadow 2. The Rose Edit. It is beautiful. Oh, just love this color story. It's gorgeous. For rose tones, like a nice warm rose. Oh, it's gorgeous. And these mattes are insane. They are beautiful. Like, they're so like just buttery, like they're smooth and just gorgeous. Love this palette. It's such good quality. And then you have your two little cream shadows. And I like that he put the little lid on there to protect them, or to keep them from getting dried out. So beautiful palette. Highly recommend. And now's the time to pick it up if you can during this Sephora sale, if this goes out in time for that. Anyways, but it's a gorgeous palette regardless. Pat McGrath. Now, this was a hard one too, because I do like a lot of stuff from Pat McGrath, but if I really had to choose based on like color story and what I would wear the most, like what is most everyday for me, I had to go with the Mthrshp Mega Celestial Odyssey, last year's holiday palette. Again, this color story just really speaks to me, and I love the fact that there's more there's more metallics than there are mattes, because again, I'm going to gravitate. I can find mattes in any palette, but to me, it's the metallics that really, decipher, really like, are what really make one brand stand out from the next, is their metallics, special shades, that kind of thing. I'm like, mattes, they're important, and there's some that do better than others, but you can make mattes work. It's really the metallic special shades, those kind of things that really, again, just decipher one brand from the next and really make one brand stand out from the next. So, but yeah, I love this palette. I love the color story. It just speaks to me, and all these metallic shades in here are just gorgeous. They're beautiful. Such good quality. Love this palette. All right, Huda Beauty. You knew this was coming, Rose Quartz. This is just my all-time favorite from Huda Beauty. And I don't know if anything's gonna top this one because I just love this color story. I love the formulas in here other than that weird jelly-like shade. Still don't understand the purpose of that one. But everything else in here is just gorgeous, amazing. Love it and love this palette. Love the formula. Oh, Anastasia Beverly Hills Norvina Volume 5. You knew this was going to be in here. This is my favorite of the Norvina palettes. All 6 of them. This is my favorite. Love the purples in here. I love that it's still somewhat neutral, a little bit like, you know, neutral to cool, but like there's some neutral shades with the purples. It's not just purples. Like you can really get multiple looks with this one palette. It's insane. And these mattes are intense pigmentation. So you got to be prepared for that, but they still work really, really well. They blend out nicely. Just a beautiful palette. Love that palette. One of my all-time favorites. And Natasha Denona. Now this was a hard one because I love Natasha Denona. There's so many palettes I could have listed in here. It was so hard to determine, but I went with the My Dream palette. And the reason I went with this one is, again, it's not an all one color story. There's still a little bit of variation in here. She actually put a multi-chrome in here, a nice one, like a good one, not like her trio chrome palette, which I wasn't impressed with. But yeah, it's just got a nice variation, some cool, some warm, neutral shades, you know what I mean? And enough variation that you could get multiple looks with this one palette. So definitely, I would have to say my favorite so far from Natasha Denona. But keep bringing it, girl. Keep bringing it, because, you know, we can always top it. And so, yeah. All right. I think that is it. Thank you so much. You'll have to let me know if any of this is, any of these brands, any of these palettes are ones that you would have chosen. Are these any of these your favorites? What do you think? Have you been wanting to try any of these? I highly recommend them. They're very, very good. If you did enjoy this content, please give this video a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe down below. Turn on all notifications. Otherwise, have an amazing day and hope to see you in my next video. Bye. Am I just dry? Yes, anyways, if you did enjoy this content, make sure you give me a, if you did, oh, I feel myself running out of steam. It's getting hot in here. And one more video, one more. Bye.